DP World Tour Picks and Bets show. I am hosting today, Tom Jacobs, and I'm joined by Ryan Baroff. Ryan, hello.
Tom, happy to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. And Bryan DeCorte. Bryan, good to see you.
How you doing, Tom? How you doing, RB?
Good, man.
It's good to have the three of us together for a bumper edition of the Scottish Open. Obviously, sad that Sky is not here, but we're having him. Let him have some vacation time, enjoy himself, whilst we sweat the Scottish Open. I don't know how we view this, because trying to get a DP World Tour winner over the line is tough. But this is a PGA Tour event as well. Does that mean that we get more luck, or does that mean it's doubly difficult?
It means you just ignore the Euro guys, I guess. If they can't get over the line on their own, they certainly are not going to do it here.
Well, I'll probably have to argue with you later on in the show about that, which is going to be interesting. But I think it's probably right. I think ultimately, one thing I would say, and I'm guilty of it later on in the show, but I think people will get suckered into some players that genuinely can't win because they're seeing inflated prices on DP World Tour players that they wouldn't see in other weeks, right? So we've just got over betting Richie Ramsey at 30 or 40 to 1 or whatever, and he's now 300 to 1 or 200 to 1. The temptation is to go with him. Just be cautious because he's put it into the water on the 18th hole twice, and now he's got to try and do it in a PGA Tour field. So these things do happen. But look, ultimately it's the Scottish Open, it's links golf. There's going to be some interesting factors that comes with links golf. There's going to be some weather, I think, coming on Sunday. Bryan, I'll come to you first. Any particular thoughts on the course and what you're kind of looking at for a player this week, or is it generally just links form?
I would lean more towards just links, Scotland, England in general, just history, just to see if there's been any signs of comfort. We all know what happened with Morikawa when he came over here, and he said, that was weird. The turf was weird. He figured it out, though, in 4 days, won the Open. So I don't know if you necessarily expect that, but I guess it's maybe look for guys who have at least played here once. I think you'd be rolling the dice on the Americans a little more who have just not played, maybe not particularly even here, just Opens in general, right? So I'm more about the experience, not even necessarily the high-end results, even though some of the guys we will talk about have had good results at this particular course in general. That wasn't the overriding factor. It is a links course. It's not I don't think it's a pure links. Obviously, it's not Parkland either. So, it's this little hybrid. It's still got the fairways. It'll have the bounce, things like that. And like you said, the wind is coming on Sunday as of now. I was checking earlier, Thursday, Friday might look, I'll call it an average day up there. But it could get really interesting on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably best described as a modern links is probably the best way to put it. Tom Doker's designed it, and it still has the links factors, and it's all been kept in mind. But Ryan, there are kind of little parts to it that suggest that you don't need to be a true links player to really succeed here.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking back a little bit, kind of the last two iterations. We had weather last year, which I think really skewed the event. Obviously, the winning score I think it was -7 or -8. We've seen the Euro guys beat up on this course and get around 20 under par. So I do think distance makes a lot of sense here. Obviously, like Bryan mentioned, links comfort makes a lot of sense. But I also don't think this is I don't think it's a get right spot, right? I'm definitely going to keep riding guys who are in form. I know when Aaron Rai won here, he had, I think it was a 15th in the UK. He had then finished runner-up the Irish Open. And then Minwoo had a little bit of form, but obviously we know how he goes. He is one of those guys who can kind of spike out of nowhere. And then obviously Xander won last year, was his third win in a row. So I'm definitely going to be looking at guys who are in form.
Yeah, to that overriding point, Bernd Wiesberger and Aaron Rai both won the Scottish Open the week after finishing second at the Irish Open. Minwoo Lee was 17th at the Irish Open, which is pretty solid for someone, like you say, that does have some volatile results. And Xander just won the Travelers Championship 2 weeks ago. So, absolutely. I think it is a current form spot. To your point, the weather can skew things. Each of the four winners here have been 27th or worse after round one. So I do think there's a good opportunity for some in-play betting if people do enjoy that. Looking at guys maybe that have got on the wrong end of the weather draw in round one, or just maybe didn't sink enough putts, can kind of get right very quickly because of the kind of scoring variance there. Bryan, did you have any thoughts on the fact that we haven't played the Irish Open the week before this time around?
No, outside of maybe just general disappointment in not watching it.
Yeah.
But the links swing, if you will, is just going to happen a little later this year. I don't know if that'll change anything, right? I'm trying to remember because I didn't prep look, but they haven't even always played a pure links in Ireland recently, if I recall.
No, it's a mix of courses there.
Yeah, I mean, so some years, sure, but no, that really didn't factor in, to be quite honest. In fact, I think, judging by social media, it seems like quite a few guys got over there earlier than usual, and I think maybe that obviously it's due to the schedule of Rocket Mortgage and John Deere. I mean, guys just said forget it, and then two, I mean, there's plenty of research to show that guys who have come over have historically played slightly better than expected compared to those who stayed in the States. So, maybe not having the Irish, I don't know if it affected it. Guys just came over and played other courses instead, right? So.
Yeah, the only player that I kind of thought in my head was like a Lucas Herbert that's kind of parlayed Irish Open results to a Scottish Open performance. That was the only one like Ryan. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on it. I know it's kind of a curveball that I didn't kind of prepare us for, but it was just one of those things in my head that I was like, this is the first time I can remember where it wasn't Irish Open, Scottish Open, and it's Denmark. If they'd come from kind of like the Belfry at the British Masters over to here, it's still a short journey, like anything in Europe is. But I just wonder if there was just a slight difference in maybe the fact they played Denmark before the Scottish.
I think so. Again, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed, both players across the pond coming to the States and then back and forth, most of these guys are just good. They're just maintaining that form wherever they go. Lucas Herbert is an interesting one. Obviously, this field is a lot better than the 2 years where he finished fourth, but I think there's something to that. And he played really well at the Travelers. We know he can putt as well as anybody, which is obviously very important here. He hits the ball as far as almost anybody, and his iron play was really good there. So I would potentially have a little interest at the 80-1 with some places, but probably more of a top 20 and probably a DraftKings play for me this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's certainly not a case of ruling him out. It's more just who was the one player that really stood out to me as who could you make a point about this on, and he would be the one, I guess.
Yeah.
Interestingly, you point out the Travellers there. For some reason, I kind of pointing out a correlation between Scottish Open and Travellers results, which I think is just a schedule thing rather than anything to do with courses or anything like that. It's just a time of year and people playing well at a certain point of year. But you had Alex Smalley crossover in both events. You've had Xander crossover in both events, and Kitayama's had a good result in both. So there is certainly something to that, and probably just the time of year. And I think, to your point, the players coming over from America have been just as successful coming off of a Travellers or something else rather than an Irish Open. So I think maybe just a negative in the sense of some players that generally play the DP World Tour and maybe would rely on that first links effort more so than the top guys at the top of the board. But let's segue that into the top of the board then. And at the very top is no surprise that we've got Scotty Scheffler at 7-1 or plus 750 in some places. Rory McIlroy 850. Patrick Cantlay 14-1, Xander Schauffele 14-1, Ricky Fowler 18-1, Victor Hovland 20-1. Bryan, we haven't picked up anyone here as a group, but would anyone interest you at the top of this board, and who was kind of closest for you if there was?
I'm going to be honest. If anybody, it would be Scheffler at plus 750. I actually made him a slightly heavier favorite. Now, that's just pure numbers, right? When I then think about it, I don't know tee times. I don't know for sure whether that's what scared me off of even really entertaining it. The unknowns here are just a lot larger than most weeks prior. I mean, again, you can look at forecasts, but honestly, a week ago, it looked like every day was going to be a hurricane over there. So it's already changed. I don't know if I didn't really want to just jump in at the plus 750. It was an edge, but it wasn't anything where I thought the books necessarily screwed up massively. And again, it wouldn't, right? I mean, you look at his results, so nothing would shock me, no matter what weight he's in, if he just finished in fourth place.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I get that. And look, to your point about the weather, I was standing there on Saturday at a golf tournament thinking that it was going to rain all day and it was brilliant sunshine for the afternoon, and then the next day it wasn't meant to be any rain and there was rain for an hour. Like it does just change on the spot. So absolutely. Ryan, same question to you. Like I saw you nodding your head there with Scheffler. Was there anyone else that you really considered?
It would be Ricky Fowler for me. Again, form. Obviously, he's played well over here. Played the Scottish Open a handful of times, probably. Just playing so incredibly well, and even when he wasn't quite at this level last summer, he was in the mix going to the final round last year. I think he shot +5 the last round, but he was one of the few players under par after Saturday last year. So obviously, like I said, he's of course one of those guys who's been over here already for a week, up at Wimbledon with Spieth and JT. 18-1 was a little bit short. He's probably down to 16 now, so I didn't get there, but just absolutely love the form right now.
Yeah, enough of the guys that we're probably not betting. Let's talk about. Let's go straight into the ones that we are. Ryan, I'll start with you, and I'll follow on because we're on the same guy. Tommy Fleetwood's here at 22-1. Past just the fact that Tommy Fleetwood deserves a win, and he's got to the point where he, definitely should win. I think he's over 2 expected wins now on the PGA Tour. What is it that you love about Tommy Fleetwood at the Scottish Open?
It's Tommy Fleetwood at the Scottish Open. What's not to like? Like Bryan said at the start, guys who are comfortable on links. The 3 that come to mind anytime you come here automatically would be Fleetwood, Lowry, and Hatton. You can probably throw Fitz in there as well. But I mean, those 3 always get a massive bump. Lowry has not done well here, so he wasn't on my list. I really was torn between Hatton and Fleetwood. I'll just take the guy who's been a little bit closer in recent weeks to winning, obviously, and a little bit closer at this golf course. Obviously, he has a 4th and a 2nd here. Was that the year that he lost to Aaron Rai? Yeah. That was. So I just feel like he's a guy who's going to win a Scottish Open, potentially an Open Championship. I'm not worried about the miscut at all at Travelers. No,
so look, I mean, he's had 4 top 5 finishes in his last 9 starts, 5th at the US Open, 2nd at the Canadian Open. He should have won there. Like I think is probably fair to say. That my slight hesitancy on my part was how bad he was with the irons at the Travelers, but then he was terrible at Colonial with his irons and then finished 2nd at Canadian Open. So I think he'd just get right, and elsewhere you've got to give him that links bump. So just that form and the fact that he's got those great finishes. I love the fact as well that he's kind of gone from, and that people would look at the fact that he's lost in the playoffs with Aaron Ryan, say like you should be winning that, but he shot a final around 67 as well, and still lost. So it's not like he just choked. And Aaron Ryan is a very good golfer that we'll come on to. Like it's not something to be kind of sniffed at. And then he had a really slow start last year. Open was 73 and then went 69, 67, 67. So he had too much to do going into the final rounds. But I just like the way he's grinding out the results as well as put himself into position. So love Tommy Fleetwood.
And I was just kind of one other point there, kind of looking back at when he came in here last summer, he finished 4th. He was coming off a T46 at the Travelers and a miscut at the US Open, right?
Yeah.
And then previous to that, he had gone 5th at the PGA, 35th at Schwab, 10th at Porsche European Open. So it's kind of one of those things where you just have to overlook the 1 or 2 bad weeks and look at the long-term form here.
Yeah, I completely agree. Bryan, the one other guy that I think people will go to at a similar spot here, Tyrrell Hatton, another Englishman. He's now 22-1, or there's actually 25-1 on here, biggest number I've seen. He's been going off at kind of like 14-1, 18-1, and it feels like a good opportunity in Scotland for him to go well here.
Yeah, so I made him and Fleetwood almost identical in my number, and if you look, you brought up Fleetwood's form. I mean, Hatton's isn't that far off. I mean, we haven't seen him since the U.S. Open, but I mean, before that, T3, T5, T3. I skipped a few T15s, but and the reason I sided with him, I think, and I made him slightly ahead of Tommy was mainly, again, I don't know for a fact what's going to happen with this weather, but I do know that if it starts getting blustery, that I think I would prefer Hatton's short game slightly to Fleetwood's, especially when it comes to putting. And that way, even if the wind doesn't blow and it turns into a birdie fest, I mean, we've seen Fleetwood go plenty low. Don't get me wrong; he has these massive rounds, but I'd still normally tend to lean towards guys who can putt better in those circumstances. They just seem to capitalize on their opportunities more often. So, and I also trust Hatton to play in crap weather. We've seen it all over when he comes to Europe. What he's done at the St. Andrews Links tournament they host with the rotation. The name is escaping me. But yeah, So like the Dunhill. We know what he's done there. And then we've seen him in some crap weather. Where was that? Saudi Arabia the one year? It was just terrible. So yeah, I think there's just a trust factor all around, and I think his slightly better short game, I'll say. I mean, his ball striking is just as good. So that's where I went with Hatton at 22.
Yeah, and I think as well with Hatton, something that I've kind of gone to a lot on the podcast recently is like he's third in strokes gained total on the PGA Tour. He's gaining over 2 strokes on average, per, like, it's a brilliant season for him. And I think there's been a real development in his game where before you kind of saw him, he was always a bit of a birdie first player in Europe, but he kind of relished the tougher test in the PGA and couldn't quite keep up with the low scoring over there. And this season he seems to be able to do a bit of both, and that's really beneficial when you say you could have changing weather here. So certainly something to another positive to add to Hatton there. Ryan, Jordan Spieth. I don't know what Jordan Spieth is at the moment.
Nobody does.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to leave it to you as to convince people why he can win this golf tournament.
So, a couple of things. I'll say I think the narrative on Spieth has flipped in the wrong direction. Right? This guy I think he's still ranked 10th in the world. He's contended many times this year. He should have won the Heritage if not for Fitz. He was 4th at the Masters, 4th at API, 3rd at Valspar. Like, he's been around, and he was just 5th at the Memorial as well, where he was pretty much near the top of the board in terms of strokes gained tee to green. Obviously, still struggling with the putter a little bit, but again, we've seen how well he's played links golf. Obviously, won an Open. I think the slower greens will help him. I think tougher conditions will help him. And again, he was right in the mix. I think he was close to the lead going into Sunday here last year. Had a poor Sunday, of course, but I think the narrative has flipped on him, that he's somehow been bad or been disappointing. The irons have been great this year. We know that the putter is kind of the bugaboo, but I expect him to play very well this week. Yeah,
it's just one of those ones where I agree. I think there's an overreaction. Like, I think earlier on in the season it was one of those ones where like, he's playing really well coming into the PGA Championship. Let's get that major for him, complete the Grand Slam. And then all of a sudden, because he didn't do that, everyone's kind of gone off. And he's finished 5th at the Memorial since then. And I guess the Colonial would be the concern. He missed the cut there. But I think, ultimately, this is a guy that is at his best when it's creative. And like you say, links golf, the pedigree's there. So I think ultimately, again, like just as I said about the other 2 guys, I'm not doing anything to really put people off here. Like the 3 guys we picked, I think have all got solid cases.
Yeah, I think the number was high enough.
It's probably not.
It's just inconsistent, right? Like, when he doesn't have it, he's been bad. Like that. And when he probably doesn't have many top 30 finishes. It looks like they're all top 15, or he missed a cut. So.
Yep. Hey, we'll take it for an outright. But back to Schwab for a second, Tom. Like, that was a very disappointing miscut. But in those 2 rounds, I think he lost 4 strokes in the short game.
Yeah.
And most of that was around the green. So obviously that's not a huge concern for Spieth.
Yeah, like 3 of the last 4 events he's gained off, on approach, and same off the tee as well. And playing really well off the tee, which is main thing. I think, like Bryan said, like the main factor would be price. But I think that's ultimately the case with a lot of these golfers. Like, people just don't want to click a number, and the books are just going to protect against Jordan Spieth, especially when it's in open conditions. So completely understand there. Bryan, I'll let you start off with Mimuli, and then we'll get Ryan to add into there as why we like him at kind of like the 45-1 number.
Yeah, so I didn't love the number, but I had made up my mind kind of leading into this that I really wanted to take a shot with him, and I thought 45 was okay. I made it slightly more, so it's not the end of the world. I think I got okay on some places at least that might even out long term, but he talks the same way you just talked about Spieth. Like, he's been very vocal in recent interviews. Like, I love shot shaping. I love like when he was at LACC. Things like that. And obviously he's got it done here before. We saw his form coming into the year. He was one of the hottest golfers in the world, and then he jumped to the PGA Tour. And I say it all the time, it doesn't matter how good a golfer is, there is almost always a transition period. Sometimes they might start out with 1 or 2 great results, but there always seems to be a lull when it doesn't matter how good you are at golf. This is living in America is very different. All the, like you just talked about earlier, the traveling European to European is not even close to New York to California. So there's just a ton different going on, housing, hotels, blah, 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 blah. So maybe, he's been getting more comfortable. We've seen the recent results, 15th when he came over to Europe. He's been in England for Lord knows how long now, watching cricket and everything else that I've seen. 5th at the U.S. Open, T10 at Travelers. So perhaps everything's rounding back to where, the guy couldn't finish worse than third place for like 8 straight tournaments to end the year last year. So the talent is obviously there. The comfortability with this type of golf is there. I think that all compiled to allow me to be like, okay, I obviously can't compensate for that in my modeling, so I'm okay dipping a little bit to this 45-1 number.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, anything to kind of add on Mimuli there?
Yeah, just that his game seems to be a little bit more well-rounded now. I think the two skill sets that I'm mostly looking at here are going to be strokes gain off the tee and strokes gain putting, and those are his two strengths for sure. And then just on the element of these guys traveling, like he just finished 5th at the U.S. Open in Los Angeles. He went to Travelers and was 9th, then went to the British Masters and pretty much had his F game and finished, I think, in top 15. Now he got a week off, coming to a course where he's won. So I'm definitely more excited about the places than the win, but we'll take the 45.
Yeah, and look, the thing you get with Mimuli, and I think this is slowly creeping out of his game, is the volatility that people talk about, and that's why he used to get kind of maybe a bigger number than you deserved in places, because he was this type of person that could go like second then miss cut. But I think that's kind of going away, as you said. He's more well-rounded. As Bryan said, you do get comfortable, and there's a transition on the PGA Tour especially, and just 5th, 9th, and 15th is like a really strong run. And at the end of the last season, it was 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. So it is a case of he's putting these results together in bunches. He's gained putting in his last 5 starts, gained off the tee in his last 6 starts. So he is really just a strong player that people would be mad to not consider, I think. But we'll take this little opportunity to mention our audio listeners. So you've got a DP World Tour Picks and Bets The Mix show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere else that you get your podcasts. Obviously, we love people tuning into YouTube and seeing all our wonderful faces on the screen here, but we also value those that listen on the audio side of things as well. So rate, review, and subscribe on those side of things, and really do your bit to support the show, because we love doing these. We love bringing them to you, and appreciate all the support and feedback that we get. Coming on to the next round of picks then, Bryan, Wyndham Clark, who I must admit really intrigued me. The number's 50-1 on him. This is 50-1 on a US Open winner. Do you think that the numbers are there because I say this a lot, and maybe it's just really cliche, but people just don't think certain players can win twice in a year, and there'll be certain people that think he was lucky to win the US Open, so they just give up on him being able to win twice in the season? Yeah,
and they might all be right for different reasons. Their logic is probably a little flawed. He won twice in 4 events. He won the Wells Fargo, another huge event. Last we saw him was at the Travelers, finished T29. It's the first time he had lost strokes on approach since February. So the iron game has been strong. Off the tee, been quite strong. He's only had one bad week, and that was at the PGA Championship. He still hit his irons very well. He just put himself in some rough spots with the driver and couldn't recover, which we saw plenty of happen at that week. So, yeah, 50-1 seems absurd to me, to be honest. I thought the 81, I bet him at the U.S. Open. 80-1 was a terrible number for how he was playing. And I think the biggest thing is you hit a nail on the head. He's won so recently. People are so averse to these guys being able to win again. It's like, oh, well, no one's Tiger Woods. He's the only one that could possibly. We see it. We see it from time to time. These guys just win in bunches. We saw it with Scheffler. We saw it with Xander last year. We've seen Rory do it. We've seen DJ do it. That doesn't mean he is those guys, but he's more than capable. The way he's been playing, why not? So I think 51 is absurd, to be quite honest with you. And he's seen this course. I think he was T20, like 18th maybe, something.
Yeah, 16th he was last season.
Okay,
he got better every round, which I was really encouraged by. And I think this is a guy that, look, he's not going to have a wealth of Open Championship experience. I think he's played there once and made the cut last year. But, even since winning the US Open, tied 29th at the Travelers, whilst losing on marginally on approach and gaining all 3 other areas, I guess it's going to come down to him having a really strong week off the tee, which is something that he's basically built his career on, off the tee and putting. And those are the 2 things that Ryan said earlier that he was really looking for in a player, and Clark fits that billing.
Yeah, I honestly just find it wild that some of these golfers that are priced lower than him. And a lot of it's historical. And again, his name's Wyndham Clark. So maybe people will look back at this in a year or two after he has a couple more wins and be like, oh, but maybe not. But I just think at the moment with how he is playing, and for all the people who are scared of guys who can't win, don't win, well, he has. So I don't understand. I did not understand this number whatsoever. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm gonna go slightly back on the odds board because I've skipped my one here, maybe subconsciously because I've done it so often now. Justin Rose at 45-1, like you say about Wyndham Clark, and I know there's probably a little bit more to it than that, but I just find 45-1 a bit big on him. It's just, look, Dade Golf has him as 21st in the world. I think he's maybe slightly better than that, and I think that this is a formerly elite player who did really struggle, a little bit like Ricky Fowler, who's maybe not quite back to what Ricky Fowler was, but he's been there and thereabouts for ages now. He had a really poor iron week at the US Open. He kind of bounced back in the second round, didn't make the cut there, but he was the 36-hole leader recently at the British Masters. He finished fourth. People will argue as a betting favourite you should be converting a 36-hole lead, but we know how difficult it is to win a golf tournament. And I actually think the Belfry is one of those places where it's really hard to front run. Like it's a cause you can get in a lot of trouble, and I don't necessarily think it's such a bad thing that he went away. And he was 7th there in strokes gained approach. That was the 4th time in the last 5 events he's been 13th or better in approach. He led the field in Colonial with his irons and wedges. So that, plus the fact you look at his last 3 Open Championships in Scotland, he was 2nd in Carnoustie, 22nd at Troon, and 6th at St Andrews. You look at the fact he's won the 2014 Scottish Open. He was 2nd in his title, 2nd in the halfway mark at his title defence, and then fell away. And then even here last year when he wasn't playing his best golf, he was 14th after round 1 and 20th after round 2. So I think I'm just really happy to give him a chance. And I've been saying that all season, and he hasn't done it, other than the Pebble win where I definitely wasn't on. But to me, I just thought 45-1 on a player like that was kind of stand out. I see Ryan, you're kind of nodding your head. I wasn't expecting that, but I think he's good value, I think.
He's playing better than I probably give him credit for. I think the British Masters was obviously skewed by the first round, and then he kind of stumbled after that. So I think I looked at him. I also looked at Wyndham Clark, but I think if Rose had shown me more than one round, I potentially would have gotten there this week.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the longer body of work, as you said there, and it was just really a one bad iron week at the US Open that's really caught him out. But Brian, any thoughts on Justin Rose?
Yeah, I watched a lot of that British Masters. For some reason, I just didn't have a lot going on at that time, and he did seem to struggle later in the week, but like you still look, it was T4. Like he pieced it together. Like it was ugly. I remember watching, being like, oh my God, he can't hit a wedge right now, and then he'd find it, and then so maybe it was his try. I mean, he doesn't really normally do that. Go back and play that. So I honestly have him within the top 15 at this current point in time in this field. The problem is, I personally put a lot more win equity, obviously, than the market, and no juice on these guys up top. So, like I had, what I do with Rose, 58-1. So it's not wildly off. I mean, those are small percentages when we're talking outrights, fractions of percents, which you can shift however you want. So I don't hate it. I just I'd already made my mind up kind of with Minwoo and Clark right there, and like I said, that kind of sucked the win equity out from pretty much anyone else in that particular range for me.
Yeah, look, I think that you're just in this range, you're going to have your guys. Like I think at the top, you do have to have a really solid foundation on 22-1. So when it gets to like 45-50-1, if you've got a player that you like that you can make a case for, you're going to in an event like this. And I was just encouraged by the fact, like you said, it was ugly, but he gained strokes off the tee for the first time significantly in a while. And the fact that the thing that he's struggling with compared to the modern golfer is distance, he's actually probably going to get away with that a little bit this week. So I know you do want distance, but I think he's the type of person that's his ball speed and club head speed is pretty fast now. It's improving. So I think that with the extra run, he could be okay. So I like Justin Rose. People don't need me to sell them on the fact that I do like Justin Rose, but yeah, I'm going to go with him again. Consensus pick for us now, which is one that I absolutely love. And I've been trying to find a way to play this guy all season. I haven't got there, but Aaron Rai is 90-1 for the Scottish Open. Ryan, I'll come to you first as to why we should be betting Aaron Rai.
Yeah, I think again another player who's just elevated his all-around game recently. What we know from watching him play in Europe is this guy hits a ton of fairways. Really good wedge player, short game player, just could not putt. Seems to have fixed it a little bit. I mean, putting is still the bugaboo for Aaron Rai. Let's not forget that. But just coming in excellent form, back to a course where he's won. So he was 12th at the Schwab. Third in Canada, probably should have been in that playoff, honestly. 24th at the Travelers, ninth at the Rocket Mortgage, and just seems to be doing everything well. Obviously missed the cut here last year, was probably his worst performance iron-wise of the season. I'm willing to overlook that. We've seen him play well at the Irish Open, obviously, play well at the Scottish Open. I just think this is an excellent spot for Aaron Rai.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, to your point about him being sort of well-rounded and improving, like, I look at him and Bezuidenhout, who sort of came on the PGA Tour at the same time, as similar types of players in terms of quality and upside. And I just think he's streaks ahead of him right now. I think he's really solid. He still plays well in places that I don't expect him to, and that's always the worry for me, is that when it feels right about Aaron Rai, he's probably not going to do it. But that's totally a feel thing and not a numbers thing, which makes no sense. But when you look at it, like, he's 56th in the FedEx Cup rankings, which doesn't sound amazing, but for someone of Aaron Rai's talent level on the PGA Tour, I think it's really successful so far this season. And as we've said, like, he battled Tommy Fleetwood and beat him in the playoff here. He finished 35th on his title defence. It was just those miscuts in 2019 and 2022, which ultimately I think he's a better player than both of those years now. So T24 are better in his last 3 starts, and in 4 of his last 5 overall. I'm really impressed. And his irons and approaches, have been really good. Like, he's been 4th on approaches last 2 starts. He was 2nd in that category in Colonial, 5 starts as well. So the fact he's doing these stronger fields on the PGA Tour, Bryan, is really encouraging for Aaron Rai.
Yeah, he's just playing a lot of golf. So like that rhythm, that consistency, hopefully, like we just said, it seems to be peaking at this moment. He started off a little slow, but again, there's transitions for everybody at different, he didn't exactly pop on to the European scene right away either. So yeah, my number was slightly better. Again, that's a big numbers betting that drives a lot of what I do, but it's been very encouraging with this form. He hasn't lost strokes in any category over the last 3. I guess he was maybe slightly negative on approach at Travelers, but yeah, he's been right there. It's just very, very consistent. We've seen this. We've seen a T20 at an Open. We've seen the win here, unfortunately, because I had Fleetwood that week. But he owes me one here. But yeah, it's just everything seems to be clicking for him. Now, it'd be a tall order to go out and win this with this field. But, we talked about distance. I'm not as big on distance this week. And not that I'm big on accuracy either. However, once again, he is so accurate with that driver. Like, if the winds do pick up like that, I'd rather have someone maybe that I feel can control their drive better, considering the weather, and just stay out of, like, don't manufacture that big number for yourself from the tee, right? Like, don't get in trouble off the tee with this weather. Like, at least have a shot into the green and go from there. So if we're spinning these narratives, like, that's kind of how I can wrap my head around, like, okay, how could Aaron win this event? Like, that's kind of how I would see that happening with this field.
Yeah, and look, the concern, as Ryan said, was the putting, but he's actually gained in each of the last 2 events, only marginally, but in both events at the Travelers and the Rocket Mortgage, and he's got better at the Rocket Mortgage. And they're kind of like birdie fest events that he might not have to deal with. If the weather is calm and it only comes on Sunday, it could get a little bit out of control of scoring here. And I just think the putting's okay for this event. I think ultimately, if we're going to get him anywhere, it's going to be here. So this is probably his best remaining chance of the season, I think, to get a win that I wouldn't say his play deserves, because that's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but like, he's certainly trending in that right direction. So absolutely love to see that.
Maybe he goes out on Sunday, he survives before the giant winds come, and we watch a classic European meltdown. I mean, yeah, you're bringing the PGA Tour to Europe, so that doesn't necessarily mean these meltdowns are just going to stop.
No, absolutely not. Talking of meltdowns, I don't know if he's necessarily a meltdown, doesn't quite get there. You guys, joked in the chat that you'll probably forget how to play golf in round 3, and that's probably accurate. I can't look at Alexander Bjork when people have been betting him at kind of like 14-1, 16-1, 20-1 all season, and he's 125 to 1 or 110 to 1 here, and he's just been automatic. He's 4 straight top 10 finishes. I think he's had 8 on the season, 7 on the season. It's utterly ridiculous. He's gained strokes on approach heavily in 5 of the last 8. His putting's extremely good all the time. He finished 8th whilst whilst losing a significant amount of strokes on the putting green. Look, the off the tee is the massive concern. It is the fact that, like you said, Ryan, in the group chat earlier, that he's going to hit one 243 yards into the other and maybe doesn't recover from there. But
yeah, but he's the best iron player in the world again.
Yeah, exactly that.
That going for him.
What more do you need? And I just think that the narrative is going to be that he can't beat a weak field in Europe, so why would he be able to beat a strong one in Scotland? And I completely understand that. But I'm just looking at it from the fact that he's just been so solid for so long now. And when you look at his debut here on this golf course, he opened with a 66. He went 66, 69, 68 and was nowhere near. Then he finished 19th, opened with a 63. It was his second round that was terrible. He was 75, but he was still in the top 20 going into the weekend. When he was 26th, he shot a third round 63. He was 8th going into the final round. And then even last year, he was 9th going into the final round and shot a final round 75. So we know what the problem is the fact that he doesn't do very well in the mix, and he probably certainly won't do that if he's going with Scotty Scheffler and players like that. But
I mean, he needed a birdie this week, right, on 18 at the time, and just bogey. There goes that ticket. We both had him this week. I mean, I bet him like 8 times this year, it feels like. So
great. Yeah, I mean, probably a great top 20, top 30, top 40 bet. Very likely going to make the cut for, a low 7s on DraftKings this week. So I'll get my exposure there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the sensible thing to do, is just take the inflated number and apply it to the place markets. I'm just going to go for broke and hope that I think sometimes you can just stumble into a win and all of a sudden the narrative will change that he's won a PGA Tour event and suddenly he's really elite at winning, which is definitely not going to be the case. But we shall see what happens this week. Fellow Swede Ryan, to finish off for you with Alex Noren.
I do have the other Alex as well. I don't know who you want to do first, but I'm happy to dive into Noren as well.
Yeah, go with Noren and then we'll round out the other one.
We bet all Alexes this week, I guess.
Did.
Yeah, so look, Alex Noren, breaking news, Ben Coley just bet him too, so excellent. Not the only idiot here in the chat. So he's been really bad for most of the year, all of last year, obviously. But the iron play has finally started to come back. He's now moderately, he gained on approach 5 of the last 6 events. He's back to being a wizard on and around the greens, which we love to see. Obviously, he does not drive the ball well. Maybe it's a Swedish thing. Who knows? But again, just a guy who, look at the long-term pedigree. You look at the comfort playing links golf. Obviously, he's won a Scottish Open. He's won the British Masters. He's won a French Open, not a pure links course, but we know there are links elements there. And look, I mean, this is a guy who won, 10 times in like a 9-year span. Look. Like that puts him in that same range with like Poulter and Keimer and GMAC as like that, and like Stenson at like that level. And now you're getting him, obviously has a lot to play for with this potential Ryder Cup captain's pick that he'll be looking for. So riding the Noren train one more time.
I guess we'll have a very brief 2-minute chat about the Ryder Cup. Ryan, does Rasmus Højgaard or Striker get themselves in the Ryder Cup with just that one win?
Yes to Sepp, no to Rasmus. He will need to play well this week and or next week, and then I think he will be there, but he's not in yet. No.
Brian, any extra thoughts on that?
I wish I could figure out what Europe would do, because this is the first time in a while with the big names, the normal guys like Sergio and them probably not in, that we've ever had to really debate what we would deem mid-level. It's probably rude in me to say, but like a mid-level PGA guys even like thinking about going. Like in years prior, there was really never conversation about guys like Sepp or Seamus who were having, we'll call them solid years on the PGA Tour, but they never really seemed to make it into the conversation. And sometimes we just saw that they probably didn't even care. Didn't even attempt. I mean, we saw Casey bail for 4 years or whatever it was. Like he just came over and said whatever and didn't even keep his card. So I don't know, like, if you're Europe, do you just say, you know what, this one might be tough, but it's at home. Do we get a look at these younger guys instead of a Sepp or a Sheamus, who you might think technically is better? They're playing better competition week in, week out. But I mean, Rasmus wins. It's not like he's been incapable. I mean, I don't know. It's not my problem to have. So if it was my problem to have, I would say give me the younger guys if it's even close. Like,
it's definitely going to be a younger
I get that
guy.
that's against the normal. Like, you want experience and all this other stuff, but it's like this year's been so weird for them. Like, I don't know. Why not roll the dice when you're not supposed to win? Like, I get that they haven't lost in Europe in forever, but let's be honest, they're still going to be big dogs going into it. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be at least one guy on the back of that team who's very, very young. Like, I think we all know there are 8 locks on this team. I think Moronk is on, and I think Sepp is on. At that point, we've talked about Aaron Rye. If he wins this week, that'll take care of it. But like, I think Aaron Rye should be on that team. And then you have Luke Donald with the youthful choice of taking the European guy in Rasmus versus maybe taking Ludwig Aberg, who I think that would cause a lot of issues in that he really hasn't, quote unquote, paid his dues. He hasn't played in Europe really at all. Obviously hasn't won anything yet, and there's still time to change that. But I think one of those two will be the final pick.
I think with Aberg, they're desperate for him to just play well this week and just let everyone see him on the biggest stage. It's a PGA event as well as in Europe. And look, I actually do want him to do that. Like, there's been a lot of contentious thing about the fact that he's overrated, and it's not overrated in the odds market, yes, but he's not overrated as a player. He's a great talent, and I think that if he can show something in this Scottish Open, somehow get himself into, he's not in the Open Championship, right, unless he wins this week. So I would love to see him just go back-to-back weeks and just really impress, and I think that's ultimately what Luke Donald wants to happen as well. So he wants an excuse to pick this guy, and I think it all goes to your points, right, that we are expected to lose. I think that when you look at the Italian Open course, it feels pretty American friendly. And I think that the trouble is now that they always talk about the fact that, Europe can set it up to suit European players, but our best players want what the Americans want as well. Like, Rory, Rahm, and Hovland want what the Americans want. Like, they don't want these kind of rough ups and tough tests. So I think that's,
look at what Aberg does best.
Yeah,
that's what he does.
Yeah, exactly that. I think, why are we going to play away from our best player strengths to suit the narrative of what we've had over the years? Like, we're just not those players anymore. So absolutely,
I bring both of them.
Yeah, it'd be good.
Why not?
It would be good. I'd like to see it. Ryan, you mentioned the other Alex there. Like, the numbers completely changed on Alex Smalley from when we kind of wrote the messages to each other earlier. So I took him at 150 to 1 this morning. You took him at 110 to 1. He's now 75 to 1 best price, and as Bryan said, they're like insane. Like, it is a massive overcorrection.
Yeah.
Which I can't in good conscience now make him a bet at 75 to 1. But I love everything about his chances of winning this week, or maybe not winning, but definitely placing. Yeah,
for sure. I think probably no exaggeration in saying that he is probably in the top 10 iron players in this field right now, and it's been that way. He's obviously on an exceptionally nice run right now, but it seems like since really last summer, he is just consistent, like almost like a shot around strokes gained approach, which is pretty damn good. Obviously almost won the Deere yesterday, was 9th at the Travelers, 25th in Canada, 18th at Wells Fargo, 23rd at the PGA. So he's kind of now elevated himself, much like we've seen from Wyndham Clark. He's obviously not quite there yet, but he did finish 10th here last season with 1.5 really, really bad putting rounds. The ball striking was elite. I believe he led the entire field in greens and regulation at this event last year. So obviously his game travels, and he's playing as well as anyone in this field right now. So I agree, places are for sure necessary here on Smalley, but I don't see him stopping this week.
Yeah, look, this is probably a numbers thing, Bryan, for you, but like, it feels like to me that when you shoot 4 under in the final round, more often than not, you're going to be okay. And it's just the fact that Sepp shot 9 under and should have been 11 under, but not for a double bogey in the last hole. Like I felt pretty comfortable with what he did yesterday, despite being disappointed that he didn't get the win.
No, that's fine. Honestly, at 150, I think that was a good number. I saw that that's where he opened a lot of places. I think that was bet worthy. I did not. I decided to sleep in this morning. So I imagine if I woke up and saw that based on my number, I would have bet it. It is drifted way beyond. It seems like it's come back. I saw him at 50 at some places. So maybe he's dropped at others. But, it's one of those things where, again, people are going to listen to me and be like, you're an idiot. But I'm betting guys who I think are actually going to win, whereas I don't necessarily do that. I think they can win. But so Alex Smollett at 75 does nothing for me. So he can play well here. He's playing extremely well now. It's just, for me, I missed the window of where I would have bet him. So I'm just not going to. It would shock me though if he did. I mean, holy crap! And he's still 75-1 for a reason. But I don't know. I think a fair number for him, for me, would be closer to 90. But.
Yeah, and I think with Smalley, it's going to be hard to know. And we're going to see this in a couple of years after this plays out. Is he going to long term be a good links player if he plays in more of them, or is it just a case that he, was in good form at the right time of year and come over, and his ball striking was, as Ryan said, just really successful. I mean, he was second in approach, second in tee to green, and first in greens and regulation that week. Is it going to be something that he can do long term in links courses, or is it a case that it needs to be the weather suits, whatever? So he struggled, I think, in the final round. He was one of the only people in the final round that in the top 10 that kind of shot over par. But I mean, I loved it at 150-1, and as we've said here, we don't love it at 70s. But I think ultimately, I think he's going to play really well, and his iron play is going to lead him to that. So final pick for me, and then we'll get out of here unless we've got anything else to say. But Daniel Hillier is 350-1, and there's a reason Daniel Hillier is 350-1. Like he was whatever he was, 200-1 to win a European event recently when he did, or when he contended before, and then he went and won the British Masters at a lower number. But I mean, he was nearly 100-1 when he won the British Masters. I just think that this is a guy that can kick on from this success, and I think he could be on a very steep upward trajectory. Like, he won on the Challenge Tour in 2021, he won again in 2022. He's now won on the DP World Tour after finishing third in Northern Ireland last year. He finished third again in Germany the week before he won, finished fifth at the KLM Open. Like, it's a really sustained period of form now. And when I look at his Hero Open form at Fairmont St Andrews, he's had good finishes there, like 12th and 20th or 12th and 23rd, which I was really encouraged by. He's had two good finishes in the Irish Challenge, which one of them was a links course and one of them wasn't. So I like those. I like the fact that he played well at the Vic Open. He was 15th there in 2020, and it was Mimuli who finished first and second there. So for me, I just think there's been a lot of encouraging signs for Daniel Hillier, including obviously the win at the Belfry. Look, he put together a huge final 3 holes or whatever it was to win that tournament, and you can't really rely on that happening very often. But I just think there is a real player in there. He gained a bunch on putting to win the British Masters, but he's been good on approach. He was great on approach at the KLM Open. I think he might have actually led the field. So I think this is a real player who, I'll take the chance he's a real player now and find out that I'm wrong in a couple of months' time, whilst the number's pretty hot. So, that was my kind of long shot Daniel Hillier. Bryan, any kind of DP World Tour regulars that you kind of considered at the kind of inflated numbers that we're seeing this week, considering the field?
No, I can let go of my attachment to guys like Guido, despite the giant number. Like, I don't know, maybe someone will throw me a free bet and I'll just hop on for fun. But I will watch, I will root for him. But I, as a bettor in my betting life, it's very rare golf that I will at least put it out to the Met. Like, I would never encourage anyone to tail me on a bet like that. So
no, that's fair.
But this guy's not here, so in his honor, sure, go fire away 500-1 or whatever I saw.
There is.
No, I'll be rooting hard for Guido and a few other European faithfuls, but These fields, man, I think the difference between the tours is pretty big. I think that's become more and more apparent. I think there used to be a little bit more argument about it, maybe even just as a couple of years ago. But I haven't. It's not going to get any. It's not going to shrink either. So, I mean, yeah, you'll still get your guys who pop. And as far as Hillier goes, I mean, look at the one major where we've gotten the most kind of random, oddball, older. Didn't think it's the Open, because you could weather could wipe out half, and then weird bounces off the turf could wipe out, and so I mean, if you're gonna do it and take a stab at a guy who's coming off a very euphoric victory, why not here?
Yeah, like I just looked at last year's, and it was Jamie Donaldson in tied 6th, Rasmus Højgaard in tied 10th, Dean Burmester and Timus Dietrich in tied 10th. Like, I get that Burmester and Dietrich in particular were kind of higher echelon players than even Hillier is right now. And it is, you are having to luck out, but I think it is possible, and I will take a chance on the guy that's won recently. Ryan, quickly the same question to you, and then we'll summarize our picks.
Yeah, there's two. I won't sort of dive into the mid-tier one, but I do think Rasmus is in play this week. I expect him to carry that form over. But in terms of long shots, I'll take the other most recent winner on the DP World Tour, in Tristan Lawrence. So he's now won 6 times as a professional, 4 times in South Africa, twice Challenge Tour, twice European Tour. Obviously, there are links elements there. And then he won at Crans last year, right? That is probably the most linksy correlation. You just look at the winners there. You had my boy Soderberg, Fitz won there twice, Norens won twice, Willett, Bjorn, Ramsey, just lots of really good links players. And then I mentioned Alex Smalley was number 1 in greens and regulation at this event last year. Tristan Lawrence was number 2 en route to a top 25 finish. So again, probably a guy you can get at 250, 300 to 1 with a bunch of places. Probably a good top 20 type player and a DraftKings play, depending on the price. But he's the one long shot that I almost got to this week.
Yeah, I think we've said it all. Like we've said that probably use the inflated numbers to take on the place markets instead of trying to look at outrights. But these are some of the players that we like, and stupidly I've given Alexander Bjork a chance at talk. So we shall see. Ryan, I'll come straight to you then to summarise your picks, and then we'll come to you, Brian.
Yep. So at the top for me, it was Spieth and Fleetwood, who I got at 25 to 1, Minwoo at 45, Aaron Rai at 80, and then long shots, Smalley at 110 and Noren at 150.
Yeah, Brian, your picks for us, please.
Yeah, that'll be Tyrrell Hatton 22 to 1, Minwoo Lee 45, Wyndham Clark 50 to 1, Aaron Rai 80 to 1, and then for our good friend Sky, we'll go Guido 500 to 1
Yep, and then places, yeah, and then Tommy Fleetwood for me at 22 to 1, Justin Rose at 45 to 1. There is a 90 to 1 about Aaron Rai, but 80 to 1 is generally available. Alexander Bjork at 125 to 1 in a PGA Tour field, and Daniel Hillier at 350 to 1 for the long shot bomb. Guys, that is our show for the Scottish Open. Thank you to Ryan and Brian for stepping in here in Sky's absence. It was great to do it with the three of us. Really enjoyed the chat, and we'll all look forward to the Open Championship and celebrate Alex Bjork's second DP World Tour win. Co-sanction with the PGA Tour.
You can find me in the ditch if that happens.
It was fun. Good luck this week, boys.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, guys.